Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Today we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun because we are going to be dealing with the world's greatest eye specialist. And no, I am not referring to Professor Gartrey of the Moorfields Hospital. Sorry, I am referring to her majestic wonderfulness, the eye specialist of all times. I. More eyes in the podcast than ands, ifs, weres, was's, or any other perfectly ordinary word. Quickly followed by me. Me. Oh, I think we're getting to the correct name. Well, why don't we do it in the self-styled version? Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, the eye specialist of all times. I think she ought to just simply pitch a little tent in her backyard, put up a sign saying eye specialist, and everybody with cataracts and any ophthalmological problems can simply head towards Montecito, and she will magically cure them in much the same way that she has addressed the problems of womanhood. Oh, don't you feel privileged and honored to actually have been in the presence of such greatness, if only over a podcast or a television or a computer? I mean, what did the world do before it had Meghan to shine her bright light upon all of our troubles and teach us how not only rich people live, but ghastly rich people? Because God forbid that most rich people should be as dreadful, as vulgar, and as exhibitionistic and phony as she is. Oh, but maybe I should actually modulate my tone of voice and be really breathy, because I'm gonna take a leaf out of Jackie's book, because I'm going to be President of the United States. She only made First Lady, but I've got to start a practice from now, because I'm certainly not taking any more leaves out of Marilyn's book, because what worked for her worked for me. Yes, it did. Don't think either of us got where we got without our charms. Yes, our breathy little voices. And everything else that is suggested by them. We're so clever, we girls. Oh, sorry, we feminists. So, without further ado, I will plunge in with what Tammy Gaines has to say. Lady C, can you check and find out if Meghan's Spotify podcast really was number one? There are rumors that Spotify have created a success that wasn't necessarily there. Can that be true? Darling, can it be true that the Pope's Catholic and the chief rabbi's Jewish? Do you think that might be a clue? I mean, let's remember what Elon Musk said about Twitter. Isn't it wonderful when you can play with figures the way Spotify and Twitter customarily do? But Twitter is worse than Spotify. But my goodness, is Spotify learning from Twitter? Yes, there is a suspicion according to people to whom I spoke who are very high up in, shall we call it, the industry. I don't want to get them into trouble. And I am saying them, but them is really one person. Protection. So I don't want to give their game away, let's put it that way. But evidently, after 10 hours, there were only 10,000 hits for the podcast. 10 hours, 10,000 hits. That's 1,000 hits an hour. Well, darling, this gets more than 10,000 in an hour. So that should tell you how dire the performance was. Even after they rectified the disastrous performance by creating the illusion of greater success, because remember, Spotify have paid quite a lot of money to Megsy Baby for these podcasts, these breathy podcasts. And she speaks to her dear friend Serena, who Harry, of course, let his mouth slip, or was it Serena, and said, oh, we must see more of you. In other words, they practically see nothing of each other. But anyway, even after they declared, is the word that I will use for legal reasons, that the podcast was number 2, immediately beneath Joe Rogan, when you consulted the larger list of the top 200 published by them, wait for it, Megsy Babies is a breathless wonder. Or maybe she has emphysema. Maybe she's been smoking too much dope like H and her mother. Oh, used to smoke. Oh, maybe she's just, that's what's making her so breathless. 200, the top 200. And Megsy Baby wasn't even in the top 200. So how does that work? She's number 2, then she's number 1 on the limited list, but she's not anywhere in the top 200. Oh dear, oh dear. Is this another version of The Truth? So now it's Meghan's truth and Spotify's truth. Well, we all know that Twitter is a real twit and has loads of its truths. Bots everywhere. Well, let's keep things in proportion, because it has been pointed out to me by this person that Spotify paid Joe Rogan $200 million. And they paid the breathless wonder $18,000. $18,000 only. Well, I mean, 18,000 is still a lot of money, but compared, it's not even a tenth of what Joe Rogan got. And I have been assured that, and I'm going to read out these names because I'm not familiar with all of them, that Joe Rogan, Dax Shepard, Off Menu, and Bob Bryden have no fear of being supplanted by Meghan. That in fact, Spotify is behind the scenes desperately trying to mitigate what it fears is going to be a huge, not only loss financially, but embarrassment to them. So they pulled out all the stops. It's called PR. It's also called BS. And I'm not speaking about Bachelor of Science either. I am also told that the people who were watching it were either avid Meghan and Harry fans or professionals. And there must be 10,000 journalists, reporters, podcasters, broadcasters, authors around the world who would have watched it in the first 10 hours. So it's a pretty slam dunk fact that the only people who were watching it were professionals, or largely the only people who were watching it. I am told that not even royalists have been watching it, because she has turned them off to such an extent that they were boycotting it. Now, so we go from that to number one. Well, you know what you say to children. Don't do number ones on the sofa, honey. And please don't do number twos either, although number ones are not as good as number twos for the sofa, because unless number ones are very special, like Megsy's, and they are attar of roses, they stink to high heaven. And number twos, unless they're very runny, are actually going to be easier to pick up. Well, I don't think Joe Rogan needs to worry. Jennifer Griffin says, Lady C, do you think Spotify will continue this podcast series when it is clearly a failure on a global level? Jennifer Griffin, they have tried to spin it as a success in the hope that it will turn into a success. You know the Meghan mantra. Act as if that you're rich and successful, even though you're poverty-stricken and a failure, long enough, and you might become a success. I'm the perfect example of that. That's what Spotify is doing. If they fail to spin it into a success, and spin is the operative word, are they going to renew the contract? Well, I'm not a gambling woman, so I'm not taking any bets. Let's put it that way. Martina McCosker says, wonder what fantasies she'll come out with in the next podcast. Sorry, Archie fell out of an aeroplane. Got run over by a train. And then miraculously jumped up. I'm inserting this. Miraculously jumped up, dusted himself off, and said, well, let's go, mommy. Oh, no, sorry, let's go, mom. She's a mom. Anyway, I shouldn't interrupt this question because it's really funny. And the cruel royal family made her carry on regardless. Oh, dear. Well, I am reliably informed, and now I am taking the mickey, that Mariah Carey confesses that she gave birth naturally, singing all the while to overcome the pain, to Moroccan Scott Cannon, who isn't really Moroccan or Scottish at all. Oh dear, how does that work? And her daughter, Monroe Cannon, who is really the reincarnation of President James Monroe. Well, when she revealed that, Megsy Baby decided she gotta top her. So what did Megsy Baby say? Well, you know, Mariah, I mean, that's fabulous, but I'm more fabulous. You know, when James Monroe was writing the Monroe Doctrine, I helped him. Yeah, I did. And Archie helped him too. Well, actually, Archie didn't help him. Archie helped me because I was pregnant with Archie at the time. And every time I dropped my quill, because, that's how I became such a great calligrapher, because I perfected the art of handwriting while I was writing the Monroe Doctrine at the behest of President James Monroe. And every time I dropped the quill, Archie, with whom I was pregnant at the time, as I said, and I was so tired, and I waddled, but I said that in the last show, so I better not repeat myself too much. So I dropped the quill, and Archie would dive down between my knees. Yeah, he did. I mean, I'm not the only special person around, Archie's special too. He came right out of my guts, dove between my legs, down to my knees, stretched onto the ground, picked up the quill, handed it to me, and popped right back up. Mariah Carey, evidently, is taken aback by this revelation and doesn't know what to say. I paused for breath, and Mariah didn't take advantage of the opportunity to leap right in so I could then crush what she was saying the way I crush what everybody's saying. So I just continued. And I said, Mariah, Archie's so considerate. He's just like me, one act of compassion at a time. And can you imagine, he was doing it not only before he was born, right out of my belly, of course, but before I was born as well. Doesn't that show how special we are? Much more special, Mariah, than you and that Monroe girl of yours. Mariah, yes, I'm so special and modest with it as well. Am I not just the best thing since sliced bread, Mariah? And Mariah evidently was just gobsmacked. So they cut to a commercial break, and I'm cutting to Sue G, who says, fried to sleep. LOL, brilliant Lady C. I lived in South Africa for several years, worked as a nursing sister. The time of year they were out there was not conducive to a heater being turned on. It was 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 degrees Celsius on that Monday the 23rd in Johannesburg, which is considered hot. There was no way that a fire was turned on in the nursery. I call BS on this. Dreadful woman, lies constantly. Well, I'm going to interject at this point and say that people who were on that trip have no recollection whatsoever of any such incident having taken place. Moreover, the High Commissioner would have had to make a report. Oh dear, golly gee, I didn't think of that one. Well, it's my truth. It doesn't have to be the truth. It's my truth. This is what I recollect as having happened. So it happened. SPS says, the wife or the witch, because it says TW, so I'm not quite sure whether it's the wife or the witch when it's abbreviated like that, brought the heater herself to the room. All new heaters have a thin surface of oil on the burner to prevent it from getting rusty when the climate is humid. When they started the heater, the burning oil made smoke. This happens every time you start a new heater. So, no fire, no danger, no story. Well, how does that work? I remember it. I told Serena about it. I mean, Serena really was a bitch because she did say to me that I never told her that before. But how could I have told her that before? That memory simply popped into my head when I needed to top her, just because her dinky little daughter had broken her wretched little wrist. She surely doesn't think I was going to let her get away with beating me to the punch and topping me in an anecdote. I mean, what does this woman think she is? A friend? Doesn't she know my friends never top me? Otherwise, I top them. Maybe in more ways than one. Harathi Thurazami says, sorry if I trip over the name, it's not one I'm familiar with. Why did she not bring this up in the Oprah interview? Oh my dear, in the Tom Bradby interview, which was more immediate. But then I've already said it, haven't I? I got a flash from Megsy Baby. It occurred in her memory just when she needed to top Serena. Convenient how memory works. Francia Stone says, and don't forget the courage it takes to stand up. Sorry. Oh dear. Some of you are brilliant, I've got to tell you. I start over and hope I can get through it without giggling like a teenager. And don't forget the courage it takes to stand on a tree trunk in high heels to give a speech to people who idolize her. You think it's easy to be idolized? Francia Stone, I love you. I have no experience of being idolized except by one or two men. Sorry. So I can't speak with any authority on the subject, but I will defer to Megsy Baby. And she's going to beam the thoughts through to me right now. And what is it going to be? It's so difficult to be idolized. You have no idea. All the greatness that I suffer from. I have to suffer for all you poor schlamps who adore me. Yes, I do. Because your idolization of me is just such a burden. Such a burden. It's just awful. Just awful. It's almost as bad as being ignored. All those years when I was hustling to make it and was being ignored because I was too black to be white and too white to be black. And actually, that really wasn't the reason. The reason was I was too plain to be cast as a beauty. And I was too short to be cast as a model. And my figure wasn't perfect, so I could only flaunt my wares on Deal or No Deal. And then Trev got me a job. Yes, he did. I became a paralegal. I still am a paralegal. In fact, I am a superlegal now. I'm better than any lawyer on earth. Yes, I am. All your adoration, but I don't want anybody to stop idolizing me because I am a goddess. I am a goddess. I am the goddess of perfection, plentitude, for the multitude. I am just perfect. Everybody else is imperfect, but I'm going to show you what perfection is like. So all of you just bow down and worship. Steve Austin says, thank you, Lady C, for being fun company. My pleasure. I'm glad you think I'm fun. I enjoy enjoying myself, and I enjoy enjoying others, and I enjoy others enjoying me. A word that can be used in some useful situations is ambitious. Ambitchous. I love it. Steve Austin, come and sit beside me, you gorgeous man. I love it. I've never heard that one before, and I love it. So I will repeat it. It's so good. A word that can be useful in some situations is ambitious. I'm not sure where I first heard it, but have deployed it when necessary on occasion. Not a real word, but useful when describing a real piece of work. How amusing that Nutmeg wants to highlight fabulous women, but undermines the Queen, Kate, Camilla, and Princess Anne, who any decent human being can see are praiseworthy individuals and do their jobs and duties so well. Steve Austin, you're brilliant. She is ambitious. Ambitious in more ways than one. And why would she not denigrate people who are better than she is? People like that can only flourish if they have their heels on your and my and everybody else's heads. They flourish because they stand on our heads. Otherwise, they are down there in the sewer with the rubbish. Katarzyna Herman says, I wonder who is the racist, calling the British High Commissioner's grand residence a housing unit. Sounds like she is looking at South Africa from the top of a White House with a huge contempt. Disgusting. I couldn't agree more. I alluded to that in my previous video. The impertinence of calling a residence a housing unit defies belief. But then, this is a pretentious piffler who actually had the temerity to state that her wedding, which we the British people exulted in, was a spectacle. And the great I did it, not because I wanted it, because I didn't want to be a part of a spectacle. So H and I got married 3 days before in the chicken coop. In the backyard. And the Archbishop of Canterbury is the one who married us. And if he says he didn't, he's a liar. And of course, he's a racist as well. Anybody who disagrees with me is a racist. Yes, they are. Anne-Marie Wharton says, Dear Lady C, you are fearless and very funny. Thank you very much. I'm not fearless, I will say. Fear is a very good factor to keep as ballast throughout life. I'm not fearless. I may be courageous, but I'm not fearless. But I'm glad you think I'm funny. And if you think I'm fearless, I'm glad that you see that my efforts to be brave have paid off. I want to add that the empowerment of women has come hand in hand with inventions and medical advances. Society has evolved because of antibiotics, the pill, cars, household appliances, technology, etc. Women didn't have ambitions to become coal miners, sailors, farm workers, foundrymen, or construction workers of all kinds. Feminists are too happy to ignore the facts of life and ungrateful for the huge benefits we now all enjoy. Much love to you, Mickey and Aurora. Anne-Marie Wharton, I kiss you. You are absolutely brilliant. You're absolutely right. This is the absolute truth. And this places the whole matter of feminism in its correct context. As I was saying the last time, a lot of the supposed feminism is a 20th century phenomenon at a time where women were more privileged than they had ever been, because until then, most women had to work. And yes, you're absolutely right. In the agricultural and industrial ages, women were very happy to stay at home and mind the children and cook the food while the men did the hard graft. And Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, men weren't honored by doing this either. It was a necessity, and women weren't deprived of the right to do it. Most people had tough lives, and women had easier lives than men by and large, because they were not the main breadwinners. And even when they worked, their work was cushier than men's work. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie Wharton. Tamara Rutland Mills says, early childhood experiences can influence adult ambitions in a major way. MEGHAN has told her Proctor Gamble dish soap story more times than we can possibly bear. She's going to tell us until we acknowledge it's the truth, even though it's a lie. It came out again in her podcast. It was her first experience curtailing free speech and freedom of the printed word. And she loves thinking that it was her letter that made all the difference. Regardless of how Thomas encouraged and psyched her into thinking how she had made the difference on such a grand scale, it unleashed an adult ambition to continue to restrict free speech and freedom of the press on a global scale. I agree with Samantha Markle's response to her podcast. She really owes Thomas a lot for all he did on her behalf, although it will work to our political detriment. Do you agree? I like Thomas Markle. I think he's a good man. I think he did the best he could. Doria was not around for several years. Doria was absent. He was a single father. He did the best he could. He loved her. And yes, he overindulged her. That's what sometimes overindulgent, loving parents do. My grandparents did it with my mother. He did it with Meghan. Both effects ended up being the same, producing people who really are not that desirable to have in your life. Yes, I agree actually, by and large. I think that Thomas Markle Sr. encouraged her by empowering her, and he thought it was a good thing to do. And it's turned out it wasn't such a good thing to do, because she is a dominating, controlling dictator. She's a dictator. Would she have been like this even if he hadn't woven the fantasy about her being so potent and powerful at the age of 11? Maybe. My aunt was also spoiled by my grandparents. She didn't turn out to be a monster like my mother. Two children, same environment, same parents, same everything. One turns out to be really a lovely person and the other a monster. There is a natural propensity towards certain traits and characteristics. What is nurture and what is nature? I don't think we should blame Thomas Markle entirely. Meghan is over the age of reason. She has to know the difference between right and wrong, or whether she wishes to embrace it and employ it or not. She had a very good education. How many other creatures of her ilk has Immaculate Heart produced? Let me put it another way. Think of all the awful people in history. Let's take it off Meghan Markle. Think of Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong, Joseph Stalin, to name three really dreadful human beings. Were their siblings like them? I leave you with that thought. Also, Meghan has a choice. She simply chooses to embrace that side of herself which we find regrettable. That's the reality. Alicia CC says, a study in pretentiousness. Yes, that's all it was good for. I do hope that William is taking notes for the future to vet any big block capitals, prospective partners for marriage to a member of the royal family who need permission from the crown to marry, to bring an undercover forensic psychologist on board into the staff to be a fly on the wall, to observe and then assess any red flags or personality disorders. If the Queen had done that, Meghan wouldn't have been allowed to marry Harry. She would have been exposed to both the Queen, Charles, William and Harry. Harry would have either backed off or he would have eloped and married in the US. Harry and Meghan wouldn't have received any titles and they wouldn't have had any benefits from the royal family. Since it's too late now, let's hope William and Catherine do thorough checks before their children wed. Well, Alicia CC, what you say is very sensible. However, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. The family knew what Meghan was. They were given a choice. Be accused of racism or allow the marriage, a marriage they didn't wish to allow. They chose the lesser of two evils. Also, Meghan had led them and Harry to believe that she was eager to play her part as a royal. So even though they knew that what they saw they didn't like, they thought she was willing to play her part. Would that have been revealed by a psychologist? Quite possibly. They would have still had the same dilemma. Who knows? Maybe they made the right choice because Meghan and Harry and their marriage is actually serving a useful purpose. It is instructive in a way that Greek tragedy used to instruct, ancient Greek tragedy. I throw that out for what it's worth. Linda Molkus says, thank you for listening to the dribble. It certainly was. God have mercy. There were times when I thought, oh, I can't bear listening to this for 1 second longer. The treacle that drips out of that phony's mouth as she chats baloney. I gewalt. Your comments rarely highlight the pathology of Meghan Markle. Since she has come on the scene, she has served as a living example of narcissistic behavior. I can see it so much more readily in people. Meghan Markle turned out to serve as a textbook for the globe. We almost have to thank her. It's a shame she can't be embarrassed. I agree with you, Linda Malkus. I think in life, we are often presented with situations that we dislike. And we have to turn the base metal into gold. And this awful, dreadful situation with this woman's ghastly conduct and her ghastly personality as she conveys it to us, and her ghastly demeanor, and her ghastly attitudinizing, and her tremendous vulgarity and awful pretentiousness, and really offensive up your nose arrogance is instructive. Well, either we're going to expunge her, which we can't do, or then we're going to use her as a means of edification, of education, of instruction. We can turn the base metal into gold. And I agree with you. I think people who comment upon her gross conduct and put it in its proper context are doing what Greek tragedy and indeed all forms of edifying entertainment do, which is they inform us, the viewer, about matters in life that we should be aware of, which might enter our lives, and that we, by learning things through plays, television series, books, comments about Meghan, we are learning something. We are being alert to not only narcissism, but to grossly antisocial conduct and manipulativeness that would make Machiavelli's hair stand on end. L. Dish says, D-I-S-C-H. So I don't know if that's disc. Maybe it's disc. Maybe it's a German name. But anyway, whatever. Meghan Markle is a feminist who is constantly in tears and complains about not being protected. What century is she living in? Well, we have already established that she and Archie helped to write the Monroe Doctrine, which was promulgated, if I recall correctly, in 1843. And she's alive now as well, as is he. What century is she living in? Well, she's lived in the 19th century, that we know as a fact, because the Monroe Doctrine definitely exists, and her calligraphic skills are there for all to see, post-birth, of course. Sorry, pre-birth, not post-birth. Post-birth came later. Sorry. Big slip of my tongue. But this, again, is Meghan's preposterousness. I'm such a delicate weeping flower that, oh, I'm wilting. I mean, can you imagine? The heater that I brought functioned properly, and therefore I had to turn it into a great big drama for, what's her name again? No, it's not Oprah. What's her name? My best friend, Serena. For Serena. So, and then, on the other hand, she is a potent, powerful woman who's going to teach the sisters, all the other women who have mundane jobs and are just reasonably successful, maybe worth between, 50,000 per annum and maybe 50 million per annum. She's going to teach everybody how to be really great and to be really successful, because she is potent and powerful, and she is empowered. She's so empowered that at the age of 11, she was a Proctor Gamble, know your place. Just as how she tried to tell Queen Elizabeth II, old woman, know your place. What the hell do you think you're dealing with? I am a proud, confident woman of colour. I was a star in Suits. You don't own the word royal. I do. I'm royal. You're just the Queen of bloody England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, and a few other dinky little Commonwealth countries. I am the Empress of the universe. I am the Queen of compassion. I am also the Queen of private jet flights. I have 16 thrones to sit upon. And even after I've sat on all of them, I'm still full of crap. Cheryl Johnson says, Dear Lady C, I love your ivory silk and jewellery today. Regal colours with your hair. Thank you. Harry's wife has confused ambition with avarice. She certainly has. She is devoid of gratitude. She certainly is. I saw minutes of her podcast on other channels and cringed. I understand, darling, so did I. Amazingly, she does have a following. Yes, she does. And then you have the proviso. Although it appears to be shrinking, it is shrinking. No appearance about it. It's shrinking. If I could tell you something that one of the black diplomats told me yesterday, it would have your hair on end about the lack of support in the black community and how distressed they are that Meghan has caused so much problems politically throughout the Commonwealth. That's right. One of the top diplomats. But more than that, I can't say. Amazingly, she does have a following, although it appears to be shrinking. People endure physical, emotional, financial, and legal hardships around the globe. So it is shocking that anyone could be so narcissistic as to whine about her past and present circumstances. Perhaps her value to society will be to symbolize what is and what is not a model of strong, successful womanhood that we see in so many well-known or obscure females, both in past and current times. Thank you for your thought-provoking video presented with delightful humor. Thank you, and thank you, Cheryl Johnson, for your comment. Yes, you have said in another way, and a very elegant way, and a very truthful way, that Meghan is the paradigm of what not to be, the perfect example of what to avoid being. She is everything that I, for one, would sooner die than become. And I am not alone. And she doesn't get it, that the very women she is posturing, hoping that they will emulate her pretentiousness, have actually achieved far more than she will ever achieve, even if she manages to get up off the ground and stand up erect and behave properly, which I don't think she's going to be able to do. Elizabeth Taylor says, and we end with Elizabeth Taylor and Roxy. Dear Lady C, we have learned that nobody makes Meghan do what Meghan doesn't want to, as has been proven time and time again. That's right. So when she comes up with this self-pitying bleating about, and they made me abandon poor Archie, who had such a close call that there was no fire. Oh, the heater functioned perfectly. Not that there really was any need for a heater, but I forgot. Archie's lily white, and lily white people need heaters in cold countries. Oh, sorry, they don't. They need heaters in hot countries because they can't absorb the heat. Poor Archie. But then I suppose Archie has a problem because all that diving and ducking that he was doing to pick up the quill when Meghan was helping President James Monroe write the Monroe Doctrine has most likely affected his internal thermostat. So poor Archie, sweet little Archie, needed a heater when it was 80-something degrees. Oh. But then, this is also to prove that Archie's lily white, while Olympia is not. Olympia is dusky, much duskier than Meghan. And you notice how Meghan got in two cracks about Compton, one of which was along the lines of, well, thank God I'm not from Compton like you, Serena. I mean, I ask you, how do you cope with somebody of that enormity? And Roxy ends this by pointing out that Spotify presents the United States of Meghan. Isn't Spotify wonderful? They've converted me from a goddess into a country. Well, since I'm a goddess, I can be a country as well. Goddess, Empress, Queen. I'm the queen of all global royalty. I'm a British princess. I'm a British Duchess. When I manage to hustle my way, I'm going to be a Royal Highness again too. You wait for it. It's going to come. And if it doesn't, the whole edifice is going to come tumbling down. Because what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. Don't ask me. Ask Harry. He'll tell you. H, come here and tell him. Stop juggling those balls. I'm sick of them. Just come and do what you're told. Why are you fleeing out of the room? I mean, I've ordered you, H. Well, we'll have to do without H and those wretched juggling balls. At least he still has something to juggle. I have to see how I'm going to cope with that. I think Maybe I should clamp down a little bit more than I've been doing, giving him too much rope. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest and possible amusement to you. And if you have enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions coming in. This cannot be done without you. God bless and goodbye.